This tutorial will continue the discussion of the interpolation method inverse distance weighted. Last tutorial we used the inverse distance weighted to take an input grid of elevation points and calculate the elevation in between. This is a reflection of how this tool works for natural features, elevations, temperatures, barometric pressures. This tool can also work for human-made factors such as housing sales. For the most part, housing price per square foot tends to follow the same phenomena, that even though it is somewhat respondent to the conditions of the house itself, of course, how many bedrooms it has, how large the house is, the condition that it's kept in, a house is also priced based on the prices of the houses in the neighborhood around it. Right? So if all of these have a value of 35 to 40 square feet, you can probably estimate that most houses in this area, or at least the neighborhood average, would be around that exact same value. Similar to before, IDW. Except in this instance, we're no longer using elevation. Inf per foot means price per square foot. So that's the value, that's the input value. If it's between 25 and 35 dollars per square foot, it might have a value of 30. $20. We've gone through these already. We're going to leave them the same in this instance. And we come to this one, which is new. Input barrier polyline. The purpose of this is what happens when you have natural or human-made barriers like a river or railroad tracks or major highways that really act as kind of boundaries between two entirely different zones. Imagine per se that you only had these 2 points right here, and they were trying to calculate their value of this area and this area by finding the nearest 12. So again, pretend there was nothing up here to look for, but there were some over here. So they would search across the river, find these points, and use them to calculate their value. But rivers, railroads, highways, well, major highways, really can act as barriers that chop up the conditions of neighborhoods. There's nothing that tells us that the neighborhood conditions over here would have anything to do with the ones over here. Even if they're relatively close to one another, they're separated by a river. So the insert barrier polyline gives you that option of using a river, of using a railroad, of using anything that you consider to be a barrier put into polyline form. We're not going to use it right now, but it's best to introduce it. Interestingly enough, I did my example here, but I forgot that that is slightly out of our extent. And so, something comes back similar to what we had before, in which houses and home sale prices tend to range between 438 to 130, depending on where you are in Germantown and East Falls.